Hey there, art nerds. Happy holidays. Here is my 2024 printable Papercraft ornament for your tree. Those of you from Louisiana might recognize that this is Kara dressed as Mr. Bingle, the mascot of the Maison Blanche department store chain. It's since been bought out by Dillard's, but Mr. Bingle is still around. For this year's ornament, we're going to start with Canson watercolor paper. This is their cellulose paper. And we're going to start by doing a loose sketch using a pencil. I'm using a mechanical pencil, whatever lead you're comfortable with, and that allows you to draw lightly. So the lightest you can get away with drawing is probably for the best. I have a thumbnail sketch of what I want this ornament to look like. So first I kind of noodle around on the paper, and then I'm like, you know what? Let's bring that sketch over and let's work from the sketch since it's got the notes and it's a little bit easier for me to work this way. My sketchbook is pretty much just full of thumbnail sketches and doodles that I refine later on, either digitally or like we're doing today. If you are looking for more papercraft projects to do this winter, I have an entire playlist to keep you busy. Make sure you check the cards and the description below. I will also have the materials needed for this listed out for you guys. I also have playlists on how to draw and paint people if you're looking for more step-by-step guidance. This is more of an overview because this is a topic that I've covered a lot over the years, and I would rather you guys watch those tutorials rather than try to just cram everything in here. But I kind of start by doing a stick figure form and I refine it from there. I use the stick figure to kind of place where I want everything to capture the pose, to take up the amount of paper that it's going to take up, so I don't end up with any feet coming off of the paper or any hands coming off the paper from lack of planning. And once I've got everything kind of placed in, I can start refining things. Since Mr. Bingle is a sentient snowman, I decided that Kara would basically be wearing like a kigu of Mr. Bingle. So basically like a suit. So I don't have to get hyper specific with the anatomy. Just kind of bulking out around where her figure would be is good enough for this one this time. Once I'm satisfied with my sketch, it's time to ink. I am using a waterproof brush pen. For this one, I'm using a Sakura Pigma FB brush pen. And if you are new here, hi, hello, welcome. And if you're old here, hi, welcome back. But basically, those of you who have hung out with me for a while, you know that a Sakura Pigma FB is a waterproof brush pen made by Sakura of America. And what I love about brush pens is that they offer all of the line weights basically in one inking utensil. You don't have to have a million fine liners for this. You don't have to go over the same lines again and again and again. It makes inking a lot faster. If you're new here, you just learned all of that. So I'm so glad you decided to join us today, and I hope you'll decide to stick around. the inks to cure to the paper for about an hour before I use a soft white vinyl eraser to erase the graphite lines underneath. I scanned it, and I will share the printable line art over on my Patreon if you want to just color along instead of drawing from start to finish. And now I am taping down my watercolor paper to a piece of chipboard. So basically the back of a sketchboard book, the back of a watercolor block, that sort of thing, a heavier cardboard that's more compressed. Today I'm doing something a little bit unusual, and I'm working with the Vinci mixing palette instead of working with the core mini palette that I've used in years past. This is a wonderful palette of watercolors though, with some really great colors, and you should be able to easily mix anything that you need. For her skin tone, I'm starting with a very diluted burnt sienna, but I'm going to use ultramarine blue to paint all of the white on Mr. Bingle. Since he's a snowman, there's going to be a lot of white, and I'm using the ultramarine blue to indicate the shadows on the snow. I am mostly working with silver black velvet rounds today in various sizes, but I may bring in some synthetic brushes either for finer details or for masking fluid. For his little ice cream cone hat, I have mixed together a warm yellow with a little bit of yellow ochre to start as the base. And I'm going to dab in some yellow ochre and some burnt sienna to kind of get that baked appearance that you would get from a waffle cone like this. You guys can see how a super light wash of burnt sienna makes a great skin tone. It's so easy. You don't have to add in any additional colors. And the more saturated you make it, the more you can paint a wider variety of skin tones. So burnt sienna is a wonderful addition to your watercolor palette. For her holly leaf wings, I have mixed together a cool yellow with a little bit of ultramarine blue, which is going to end up giving us kind of a desaturated olive green. If you want a more saturated green, mix the same yellow with a cooler phthalo blue, and it'll give you a really bright and vibrant green. I end up doing this for later layers on the holly leaves. want to build up the reds on Mr. Bingle, so I'm starting with a bright, warm crimson lake, and then progressively adding in some alizarin crimson to build up that red color and also build in some shadow. Since I make these Papercraft ornaments every year, this one has 2024 written on it. So we are nearing the end of our 2024. And I wanted to make it kind of a golden banner just to kind of contrast some of the colors that we've been using here and to kind of echo the colors used in the ice cream cone cap that she's wearing. Life got busy and I stepped away from this illustration overnight to get some rest and come back to it with fresh eyes. This allowed the colors on my palette to evaporate, so now they are much more saturated and we can use this for some of our finishing touches and to really hammer in that contrast. I didn't use any contrasting colors in terms of shading. I didn't use any grise for this. It is all local color. So the color you start with is going to be the color you end with, just more saturated. And I think this is a very approachable way to begin watercolor. Using a synthetic watercolor brush, I am using some white gouache just to add in some highlights and to add some white back into the illustration, like highlights on the eyes, to clean up a little bit of the line work or to make things appear just a little bit more shiny. Here is my mixing palette. Here is the watercolor palette that I used. I talk about it in my holiday gift guide this year. And now it's time to carefully peel back the blue painter's tape that I used to secure the top and the bottom of the watercolor illustration to the chipboard. It's time to assemble our Papercraft ornament. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to cut long sections of the paper out from around Kara. These are going to be reserved and saved for later because I am going to use these to add structural support. I then fussy cut around Kara, getting as close as possible to the outline. And I'm going to clean the outline up a little bit with our Sakura Pigma FB. I'm also going to add some black ink along the sides of the paper. This is a technique that I've seen other people who do similar paper crafts do, and I think it makes it look a little bit cleaner and a little bit sharper. It also covers up some of those cutting mistakes and just kind of evens everything out. This is, as pretty much everything to do with this tutorial, optional. If you want to do that, that's great. If it's too fussy for you or too much work for you, that's fine too. That handling did cause her to warp a little bit, so I'm going to use these Chinese watercolor weights just to kind of flatten the paper out again until I'm ready to assemble. So I have the materials that we're going to need to turn this into a paper craft. The first thing I want to do is I want to create some spine support. So I'm using some of our scrap watercolor paper and some double stick tape to just add a little bit of extra support to the spine on this paper craft, making sure to press down really firmly. I'm going to do a couple of layers of this. This might be a little bit overkill, and you could opt to just laminate this and it would give it some support as well. This is just the method that I've been using for the past few years. Now I'm going to cut a cross support to go across the holly wings. And again, this is honestly probably overkill. It just makes me feel better to do it this way. You can use your own discretion. It's not like this is going to see a lot of handling or have to stand up on its own, or it's going to be holding a lot of weight. It's going to be just hanging from a tree. So really, if you want to add no support at all, that would probably work just fine. I'm also adding a little structure to her hat and to her legs using the double stick tape. You could use glue if you wish. I just happen to prefer tape for these kind of things. Now I'm using a little bit of velvet ribbon folded in half, and I made a tape band with single-sided tape. Kind of figured out where I want her to hang, and then I'm going to use the single-sided tape to secure this. I'm also going to use some single-sided tape just to kind of tape down all of the areas that have been double-sided taped, because that does tend to peel away over time. And then I'm going to use my Xacto Blade, I think it's like a Martha Stewart one, just to kind of remove any excess tape that I might have had. All right, I think it is just about time to hang her on our Christmas tree. And here is our adorable Mr. Bingle inspired 2024 Christmas ornament. I have shared the colored image as well as the line art over on my Patreon. So whether you feel like painting it or you want to just print it out and hang it on your tree, it is over at patreon.com/natosoup. huge thank you to my patrons on Patreon. You guys made 2024 possible here on YouTube. I wouldn't be able to do this without your support, both financially and emotionally. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have the happiest of New Year's.